so once again, I'm just making this quick video to overview the key features that I think we can see of Truman Capote's style in particularly these two short stories, but certainly if you read some of his extended novels as well, you'll find lots of these same elements emerging. Short stories, for the record, are a very specific form, so you often have slight differences in the way one might go about writing a short story than an extended novel, but there's certainly a lot of overlap here. So the first thing you'll probably notice is that we have light subject matter, that is kind of easygoing, doesn't upset us subject matter, and heavier subject matter, seemingly strung together, sometimes in the same sentence, quite quickly, and that creates a sense of poignancy. And if you don't know what that word means, it's sort of moving, affective, as you'll notice here. It has an emotional impact on the reader. Sometimes it can feel like you've just gotten punched in the guts or something like that. And it almost creates this sensation in which you as the reader become more thoughtful and contemplative. So it can be quite like mellowing, that kind of tone. So we've got easy to digest subject matter, heavier subject matter, things that make us uncomfortable or sad, strung together really quickly, sometimes in the same paragraph or sentence. And I think this is an insight into the way that Truman Capote seems to see that clash of good and bad, happy and sad, everywhere in real life. He sort of plunges us into the mess and the difficulty of trying to say, oh, this is a little happy moment, this is a sad moment. It's almost like there's sadness and happiness smattered everywhere. And one little event can have some qualities that really warm our heart and also make us go, oh, that's tragic, in exactly the same moment. So that's almost tone-wise something that we see as similar across his work. The other thing is that's very striking and again quite difficult to replicate is that there seems to be no traditional plot in lots of his short stories. So we certainly have this idea of action almost happening in, I've used this word vignette here, short vignettes. It's like little scenes of life that are stacked next to each other. Now there are some exceptions to this. If you did the extension reading of The Headless Hawk, it has a much more traditional kind of plot structure and more sense of tension building throughout as well. There's an element of mystery that drives the plot forward. But there are lots of short stories that don't follow that kind of tension drive narrative structure that we might learn to expect from a novel or a short story. So instead it's like this collection of a little scene here, a little scene here, and the scenes seem to purely exist to show us something about a character or show us something about something that's important to the narrator. They're just like a little snapshot into the quaint little lives of the people that Capote is writing about. So it almost seems as though all the sense of forward movement in the story, like pushing on towards the end, comes entirely from the character and theme development rather than a sense of tension. As I mentioned, it's like you're watching, looking at, yes, a slideshow of moments from a life rather than one continuous episode. And the reason I think that is so effective as well is that feels like real life. I mean, often I see come up on my social media feed things that, and you guys are probably familiar with it too, those little videos that are essentially like, put this romantic, music to the last 20 photos that you took on your phone or last 20 videos that you took on your phone. And the idea is by even just stringing them together in short succession and having this music that, runs throughout that gives a kind of romantic lens to it, suddenly the kind of charm and romance of my mundane everyday life is illuminated. And I think that can feel like real life, this episodic approach to storytelling, because it is often the case that we don't notice the deeper meaning of any of these little moments as they're happening. But when we look back in retrospect, we see the kind of beauty of the journey that brought us here. The most striking thing I think about his work is the clipped tone to it, and that comes through frank, I love that word, frank word choices. So it's almost as though Capote writes things as simply as he can without being dull. So there's never never really pedestrian, boring language, but there is a sense in which, as it says here, we have just enough to move us, just enough to engage us, and nothing more. Like, it's quite withholding and unindulgent. He doesn't go on and on and on. Once he's said his bit on it and he's given you enough information that you need in order to get the really crucial detail, he's away and we're on to the next idea. And I think that tone does make the reader quite alert and focused to the central points and characters. I mean, that's certainly the case in a Christmas Memory. You definitely see that, and the episodic nature helps that as well, but there's lots of little descriptions that paint a really vivid portrait of the narrator's cousin, for instance, the older woman. Gives us just enough detail for us to feel quite sympathetic towards her and find her quite charming, and then moves straight along. This is a wonderful word that is often used to describe his writing. It's certainly in the articles that are on the LMS. I am going to attempt to say it, verisimilitude. No amount of rehearsal can make that right. Basically, I mean, it's a philosophical concept. It's about the appearance of realness. So almost how plausible something is, how believable it is. And it's usually used in a philosophical sense in talking about by very nature why some theories might be more believable than others that, explain big philosophical concepts. So you would say that something has verisimilitude if it is believable. And certainly Truman Capote's writing has this verisimilitude in that it really feels like he's there, like he's writing about real events. It almost feels autobiographical, everything that he's writing about. And the reason for that, I was trying to reflect, why is it, like, what gives it that quality? And it is this tension. There are parts of his writing that are both too weird and too mundane, too nothingy, aspects that are too detailed and also too matter of fact and, dismissive to be made up. He writes, like, he really makes us believe that he's there because his accounts of events have both the level of detail but also the level of flippancy, as though, you know what I mean, that comes when you are telling a real life story of an actual thing that happened to you. And finally, I love this idea that he's writing, it has this kind of real quality to it, but then it has like a touch of the dreamy, like a touch of the bleak and quite tragic, actually, just smattered in there. Something like quite a few moments that you could go, oh, that's so sad for that character, that really pull at your heartstrings. A touch of the absurd and the strange, just for no reason. Lots of unexplained little phenomena and unexplained little strange moments. A touch of the horrifying, and I mean this, as I said, in the truest sense of those words. I want you to really think about like the what it feels like as a human being to experience horror. So I don't think you have to be frightened. That it's quite the same idea, being frightened, as being horrified. There's something almost like on the road to trauma about the word horror. It can quite disturb us. There are definitely some really vivid images in Truman Capote's writing that stick with you, that ruminate in your head and feel, like there's something quite uncomfortable about this. I can't stop thinking about it. And there's a nightmarish quality to some of the descriptions in his writing as well. Certainly that's exacerbated by the strange way that he writes time. I mean, again, sorry to refer to the extension reading, which many of you haven't read. A Headless Hawk, there's this real sense in which you're like, does this take place over like 24 hours or 6 months? It's quite a intense couple of days, hours. There's like so much in the time frame that it has this really confronting quality about it. And yeah, you get that kind of same thing as well. Even in A Christmas Memory, there's this nostalgia where one little probably 5-minute moment in life is drawn out over a big section of the text, and then you've got a year passing in a sentence here, a sentence there, as it ties up at the end. So that kind of strange perception of time, I think, really kind of messes with us and primes us a little bit to experience that feeling that we do when you wake up from a very potent dream or nightmare and go, oh, like you've had this very like emotional roller coaster and your perception is all kind of cooked. So that's kind of it. That's a highlights reel of the particular qualities that I think you ought to notice in Truman Capote's work. And if you haven't yet done all the reading, then hopefully this will guide you as you do read those texts in noticing some of these things as you go.